Okay, in this lesson we're going to talk about a quick shortcut for graphing parabolas. Now, you should already know how to graph parabolas from grade 10. If you don't remember, we also talked about how to graph and find all the important information back in lesson 6, so go back and watch that one again. But this is more of a shortcut, a quick way of graphing, so it's another option, another thing to add to your toolbox of skills in math, okay? All right, so to do this, let's start with one in standard form. We got to identify what A, B, and C are. So in standard form, A is 1, B is -4, C is -5. Okay, so, well, even before we get going with that, don't forget our y-intercept, right? In standard form, the y-intercept is 0, C, so it's 0, -5. So I could go graph that. 0, -5 is right there. So I got 1 point. That's always an easy one. All right. Now, to use this step pattern, which is the shortcut method, you have to find the vertex. So let's find the vertex really quick using that formula we've reviewed in the previous lesson. X equals -b divided by 2. All right. So x equals -4 divided by 2 times 1. So we got 4 divided by 2, which is 2. So there's the x-coordinate of my vertex, also the axis of symmetry. To find the y-coordinate, let's just sub that back into the equation and solve for the y-coordinate. So 2 squared minus 4 times 2 minus 5. So what do we got here? 4 minus 8 minus 5, we get -9. All right, so our vertex is 2, -9. Let's go put that on our graph, 2, -9. All right, I'm going to put the coordinates on that. That's a very important point. Okay, so we got 2 points. Now, instead of trying to find the roots or go through a whole bunch of complicated stuff, this is where the step pattern can speed things up for you, okay? Here's how the step pattern works. The step pattern is 1 times A, 3 times A, 5 times A. So I'm going to write that down here. 1 times A, 3 times A, and 5 times A. Okay, so in this case, A is 1, right? So this is not going to be a very exciting example, but it's the basic starter one. So 1 times A. Well, 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times A. 3 times 1 is 1, and, 3 times 1 is 3, and 5 times A, 5 times 1 is 5. Okay, so these are the numbers we're going to use for our pattern, 1, 3, and 5. Okay, so how are we going to use them? Well, this is how it works. Basically, every time starting at our vertex, so starting right here, every time we take a step to the left and right, one step, this tells us how much to go up or down. Now, remember, A is positive in this case. A is greater than 0, it's positive, so our parabola is going to open upwards, and our values of A are positive too. All right, so let's do this. I'm going to take one step starting on my vertex to the left and right. All right, and the first step I go up is going to be 1. So let's go up 1, and I'm going to put a point there. All right, so there's our first step. All right, our next step, we're going to go over to the left and right one again, and the next step, we're going to go up 3. So I went up 1, now let's go up 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Notice how we hit our y-intercept there. Okay, so I went up 3. Okay, the next step is 5. So I'm going to go over 1 again, and I'm going to go up 5 this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what we can do is we can draw on our parabola here. Okay, connecting the dots we drew. Now the lines I drew on the graph, don't normally draw those on your graph. I'm just drawing those so you can see how I'm getting to the points. Those are like your training wheels. Don't actually draw those on. All right, so there's my parabola so far. Now look, I got all this empty space here. I really want to keep going. A big mistake that a lot of kids make is, and I made this too, you know, a lot of you just go, all right, well there's the rest of it, right? And it just looks like garbage. Okay, that's more garbage than normal. But a lot of you just kind of, you know, and I don't blame you, just kind of start going and you're not really sure where to go with the line. This pattern actually can keep going. So let's think about what the next number in the pattern would be. Well, we went 1 to 3, 3 to 5. So yes, the next number in the pattern is going to be 7. Now, why didn't I include that? Because usually your parabola with 1, 3, 5 is enough to fit on the graph. But this one, we can go a little farther. So 7 times A, 7 times 1. We're going to go up 7. So I'm going to take one more step to the left and right. And this time I'm going to go up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And put a point there. Now, that is as far as you need to go. 1, 3, 5, and maybe sometimes 7. All right, now I can continue drawing my parabola, right? And I know it's going to go right through there and then continue going upwards. And then same thing over here, right through there, and continue going up. All right, so there's our parabola. Now, again, we don't want all this other junk. I'm going to try to erase it without destroying my parabola here, right? There we go. We don't need all this on there. So again, don't draw those lines on. That was just me demonstrating how to draw this thing. All right, So there is our parabola using the 1, 3, 5, and sometimes 7 step pattern. All right, let's look at another one here real quick. Let's flip over. I'm gonna make another one. Okay, here we go with another one. In this case, I have made a negative number, and I made it 2. Okay, so a is negative 2, b is positive 12, and c is negative 11. So the one thing we can graph right away, since it's in standard form, is our y-intercept, and our y-intercept would be at 0, negative 11. So it's a little off our graph, but not too far, so I'm just going to put it, there's 0, negative 11, we'll say. Okay, now let's find our vertex again. So really quickly, the shortcut to find our vertex, x equals negative b divided by 2a. So negative 12 divided by 2 times negative 2. There we go. So I got negative 12 divided by negative 4, which is positive 3. So our x-coordinate of our vertex is positive 3. And let's sub 3 into the equation to find the y-coordinate of the vertex. All right, so what do we got here? 3 squared is 9. 9 times negative 2 is negative 18, plus 36. Minus 11, so 36 minus 18 is 18. Minus 11 is 7. All right, so our vertex is 3, 7. So 3 over, 7 up. Here we go. All right. Now, a is a negative value, right? So a is negative 2, so we definitely know our parabola is going to open down. It's going to look like this because a is less than 0. Now let's write out our pattern here. 1a, 3a, and 5a. Okay, so 1 times negative 2, 1 times negative 2, 3 times negative 2, and 5 times negative 2. So obviously we're going to get 1 times negative 2 is negative 2, negative 6, and negative 10. All right, so notice how the step pattern values are negatives this time because a is negative, which means we're going down. So every time you take one step to the left and right, first you're going to go down 2, then you're going to go down 6, then you're going to go down. All right, so let's do that. Over 1, down 2. There's our first point. All right, next one, over 1, let's go down 6. All right, brings us to here. And again, don't actually draw these lines on when you do it. All right, and the last one, over 1 to the left and right, and this time we're going to go down 10. It's just going to take us off our graph to negative 11, and that's also where our y-intercept was, so we already knew that was going to be there. All right, so there is the pattern. So let's just draw our parabola through the points we found. So again, once you know this, it's a real quick shortcut. Like normally I don't write out 1a, 3a, 5a, I just do it in my head, right? What's 1 times negative 2? I go down 2, then what's 3 times negative 2, right? So it can be a very, very fast way of graphing. All right, so there we go. And again, you don't need all these lines here. I'll try to erase them the best I can. You get the point. All right, so there's our parabola. Okay, so that's the pattern. That's the whole secret to it. There's nothing else. I'm just going to do one really quick from vertex form and one really quick from factored form, just to remind you from the previous lesson, how do you find your vertex from both of those forms? Okay, here we have a parabola in vertex form. All right, so in this case, instead of a, b, and c, we have a, h, and k. So a is 3. Now, h and k are our vertex. So the nice thing about vertex form is we already know our vertex, because the vertex from the previous lesson, reminding you, is h and k. Now, you got to remember when you're doing that, though, the h is the opposite letter, because it's x minus h. So this, in this case, would actually be like having x minus negative 5, right? Like that. So the h value is negative 5, and the k value, though, is exactly what we see, which is negative 9. All right, so we got our vertex at negative 5, negative 9. I put it pretty low down so I could fit a few points on here. Negative 5, negative 9. All right, there's our vertex at negative 5, negative 9. All right, so let's use the step pattern to find more points really quickly. So remember, it's 1 times a, 3 times a, 5 times a. All right, so 1 times 3, 1 times 3, 3 times 3, and 5 times 3. And obviously, we're not going to be able to fit many points on this because the bigger a gets, the more vertically stretched your parabola becomes. So 3, 9, and 15. All right, so let's start by moving over 1, and then we're going to go up 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. All right, 1, 2, 3 on the other side. Then let's go over 1 step, and let's go up 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There we go. And the other one would be just like a mirror on the other side, right? So far we've gone up 3. Now we've gone up 9. Now, obviously, the next one going up 15 is going to be way off our graph, right? Because we can only go up so far. But this reminds us when we draw our parabola, we don't want to cross this line here on our graph. So let's show you what I mean by that. All right, so let's start drawing our parabola here. I'm actually going to get rid of the training wheel stuff right away. There we go. Just get rid of all this. All right, cool. And the nice thing is you can just find it on one side and then just mirror it on the other, right? Okay, so here we go. And again, it's vertically stretched a lot, right? Because we've multiplied by 3. So it's getting, sorry, this is tough to draw a smooth curve with. All right, so here we go so far. Now, anything you draw on a graph for me, and any teacher really, it should continue off the graph. It's not good enough to just stop right there. We want to continue off the grid. Now again, do not cross this line because we don't hit -2 on x until up here somewhere once we've taken 15 steps up. So we just want to kind of start heading towards it, but not crossing it on the graph like that. And then same thing on the other side. We're just kind of heading towards it. All right, there you go. Pretty easy, right? Vertex form is great because it gives you the vertex, so you can graph this thing in like 30 seconds, no problem. All right, let's just do one more in factored form. Just remind you from the previous lesson, how do you find your vertex from factored form? Okay, here we have a quadratic equation in factored form. So a is the number out front. Again, that's the nice thing about all 3 forms. They all share the same a. So in this case, a is -1. Now, this would be r and s, which is what your textbook uses. In grade 10, your textbook, I think, might have used some different letters. That's the thing. Different textbooks use different letters for these things. But the main thing is your roots are those 2 numbers. But it's not -1. Remember, it's x minus 1 equals 0. So your roots are x equals 1. In this case, x plus 5 equals 0. So x equals -5. So those are my 2 roots. Now, again, the nice thing about factored form, cool, is it gives you the roots, which are your x-intercepts. So we have 1 here at +1 and 1 over here at -5. All right, so -5, 0, and 1, 0. Okay, so since a is negative, our parabola definitely opens downward, so we know that. So if we could find the vertex, we're pretty set. There might not be much else we need to do, right? So a is less than 0, so it opens down. All right, so let's find our vertex. Now, in this form, the easiest way to find your vertex is just add the 2 roots together, so 1 plus -5, and divide by 2, which is we're just finding what's the halfway point between these 2 points. So 1 plus -5 is -4, divided by 2 is -2. All right, so our x-coordinate of our vertex is at -2. The y-coordinate, we just do the same thing as we did in the previous examples, just sub in x of -2 and solve for y. So we got -2 minus 1 and -2 plus 5. All right, so we're just going to go, well, what's -1 times -3 times +3? So we're going to get +9. Okay, so our vertex is at -2, +9. -2, +9, right there. Boom. So pretty well, like we're really off. You can see the shape of our vertex probably forming already. But if we want to use the step pattern to find some more points and just be really accurate, here we go. 1 times a, 3 times a, 5 times a, and if you can fit it in, 7 times a sometimes. All right, so a in this case is -1. So 1 times -1 is -1. 3 times -1 is -3. 5 times -1 is -5. And if we can squeeze it in, 7 times -1 is -7. All right, so instead of drawing the steps in this time, well, I guess I'll draw them, right? Go over 1 and down 1. There's our first point. Then go over 1 and down 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, go over 1, down 5, which lands us right at our roots, which we already knew of. And if I want to fit one more in, I can fit the 7 in. Over 1 and down 7. So usually 1, 3, 5 will do it, but if you need a couple more points, just include the 7, and that'll fit on a standard 10 by 10 graph. All right, so draw your parabola, and there you go. So there's my parabola through that. And again, don't draw the lines on like I drew them. That's just me showing you visually how to find them, okay? And there you go. There's a fast way of finding a whole bunch of points on your parabola. And there you go. So hopefully there's another shortcut. When you start doing the textbook questions, they're kind of a mix of everything. So you're going to have to use all the skills we talk about in all the different lessons here to solve them. So sometimes you got to graph a parabola. Sometimes you got to, do different stuff. So use all of these skills. Remember, every question involving quadratics boils down to the same things. What's the direction of opening? What's A? What are the roots? What are the y-intercept? What are the x-intercepts? Stuff like that, okay? So how do you find that in each form? Go back, take some notes, watch the videos, okay? And it's all review right now from grade 10. So it's stuff you really got to know at this point. Grade 11, we're giving you one more chance to go through it and make sure you master this stuff at this point, okay? All right, so thanks, and move on to the next lesson when you're ready.